Say I just heard about a show.
Let's talk about it, talk about it.
Where the independent artists go.
Let's talk about it, talk about it.
Niecy got a new EP.
Let's talk about it, talk about it.
Stephanie's doing comedy.
Let's talk about it, talk about it.
That girl from LA
Let's
and
talk about it, talk about it.
And now your host of Let's Talk About It, Raheem Mitchell.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Raheem Mitchell. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I know I brought y'all girl back. Tonya Defreitas is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. And now, we're going to move on to the segment, Breaking the Silence, Part 3. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my co-host, Tonya Defreitas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is an honor and privilege to be here as usual. I'm excited today because we are changing the groove a little bit. So with the Pretty Sad, or actually the Time to Tell movement, we moved from just having women tell their stories of overcoming trauma to inviting men. And So the first book with men telling their stories was Brutal Courage. And now we're segueing into a joint project that includes men and women called Pierce Purpose. And we have one of the gentlemen on set today. So I'm excited about both of our guests. The other guest, a young lady, she's a 4-time best-selling author. She's published with my company. She made bestseller 4 times in 1 year. So I'm really excited about these two. I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves. We're going to go right into our lovely lady, and then we're going to let the man take the stand and move forward. So I'm going to introduce to you the lovely Browniesha Blackman. Tell them who you are and a little bit about yourself, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone. I am Browniesha Blackman, and thank you, Tonya, for announcing that I am a 4-time best-selling author. Yes, I did it in 1 year, and that is to great helps of Tonya. I am a mother. I'm an author, entrepreneur. I am a minister. I have all of the hats. I wear all of them, and I try to do it well. And so I am excited about being here today to talk about these anthologies, one of which you announced being Brutal Courage. I'm here excited about just sharing my experience in these anthologies.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Clint Richardson. I always like to start off with, I'm just a father.
Right.
I'm a father of 7 beautiful children. I'm a husband. I'm a deacon. I'm a children's pastor, you know what I mean? So everything that I get myself involved in is centered around purpose, what my eternal purpose is here on this earth.
Right.
And, what I do, I work with the homeless, recently incarcerated, and I just like to give back to the community. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, that's just like the show here. I say, hey, let's talk about it.
Right.
And everybody come on here and talk about it.
That's right.
But what I want to do is I want to actually break down how Breaking the Silence actually birthed itself within this show. So I was on the phone with this beautiful young lady right here. I work with her mom, and she was telling her mom was telling her that I have a show, and I think I was like at the 4th episode of my show, and I was explaining to Tonya how the segments that I have, and I was telling her about Breaking the Silence. She's like, wait, what? Breaking the Silence? And I was like, yeah, but the Breaking the Silence that I was thinking of, I was saying, like, say you go on a date and the date was horrible, but you told the guy it was bad, and then you come out and you tell the truth about how the date was. And she's like, well, I have a book called, she was telling me about a book, and I'm like, well, hold on then. Maybe we can go ahead and flip the script a little bit to see what's going on, and that's how it became about. And I said, you know what? That's your book. You know more about your book than I do. I said, why don't you come on in and be my co-host? And she was like, co-host? Right, co-host? I'm like, yeah, you come on, be my co-host, and let's see what's going on. And it's been going well ever since. And I think I'm saying a little too much, so I'm gonna go ahead and let Tonya take over.
You're not saying too much. No, it's always good because we don't know who's tuning in at different phases. So it's always good to talk about where it was birthed. It's a unique opportunity because at the time that we talked, it was before the pandemic that shut down recording for a little bit. But at that time, there was only one anthology, and then anthology had 5 volumes and 12 women in each volume. But since then, 3 more have been birthed
Right.
that I've not just managed but started, and then I've helped other authors to launch their own. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So, what I want to do is have both of you share how you got involved with the anthology series. And real quickly, in case viewers don't know, so an anthology is a compilation of stories. And these particular anthologies are a part of a movement I started under the first one called Time to Tell. And that stems from what you guys are actually talking about in another show. What goes on in this house stays in this house. We can't do that anymore. We can't live like that. We've got to talk about the things that are impacting homes and families, because if we don't deal with the root of the issue, look at the world. That's why it's crazy, right? So the Time to Tell movement, the push behind that is it's time to tell. It's time to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's what we've done in these books. So you've got people talking about one extreme of trauma to another. I've got women who were held in captivity, sex slaves. I've got men who were violated and never told a soul, but they told it in my book.
Right.
So we go from one end to the other. I want you to tell, you don't have to tell your exact story, but talk a little bit about why you got involved and how that's been for you, and whoever wants to go first.
I guess I'll go first. So how I got involved, originally it was, I don't know if you remember, it was me just contacting you because I had my own personal project. And in the event of telling you about my story, about, what I wanted to write in my own personal memoir, you shared with me about brutal courage. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds interesting. And then you begin to break down all these things. So I was like, well, maybe I should try it, maybe I shouldn't. But then the offer, I couldn't hold back. So I was like, I'm just going to go through with this. And so even going through with Brutal Courage, it was preparing me for something I didn't know that was getting ready to happen. And so entering into Brutal Courage kind of like segue, as you stated, me being a 4-time best-selling author, me opening up in that moment and sharing one of the most vulnerable moments of my life that I also shared in my memoir, about abuse that I was experiencing in my own home, and not even my own family members knew. I was showing up, smiling, like everything was squared away with my spouse, and my family not knowing behind closed doors I was being mentally and physically abused. And that is the story that I shared. And I don't mind sharing the title. My title was The Man of My Dreams. I thought that was the man of my dreams, and he turned out to be a nightmare. And so, that was my brutal experience. But even I think of the title where it says, it says brutal courage is even after the fact of having that experience, the courage to move on and move past that, and what I've allowed that experience to help me help others in today's time. So that was my contribution to that. And I honestly want to publicly thank you for the offer, and even allowing me to be a part of it, because I had not the slightest idea to what I was getting into, but it opened up. It opened up so much. And even just a small piece when Brutal Courage came out, and I told you, I contacted you for my personal story. It was like, you was like, yes, we need to dive into the next story. So I was like, well, it's like 2 weeks, man. So Brutal Courage really opened up like a great door for me. Coming in contact with you definitely opened up a door. And I truly believe that's how we're here today, having this conversation.
Wow.
Thank you. Clint.
Yeah. When, I'm sitting here thinking, it's like when you're going through your journey, in live time, it's like, I'm thinking about it and I'm processing all the issues that I'm going through with daddy issues, with all the childhood trauma that I never, processed through. And I believe Alvin, one of the people, we have a mutual person that we know, he hit me up one day and he said, hey, I want you to get involved, and I believe it's with the Pierce Purpose project. And I said, well, I've been thinking about journaling and doing certain things like that. Folks always, when they hear your story, they say, man, you should write a book. But I don't know where to start,
Right.
with doing something like that. So Alvin, connected me with you, Tonya, and it's been a blessing ever since. I've been sitting down, I've been writing and just processing through all of those unresolved feelings and things that I've never really sat back and, really thought, and processed that I needed to, especially with the daddy issues.
So you've been writing beyond the submissions for the story?
Oh, most definitely.
Oh, he's writing a book.
I love it. I
Most
love
definitely.
it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
caught that like, okay, he's writing a book, he's writing a book.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so Clint is actually in Brutal Courage. No.
Pierce Purpose.
You're in Dear Dad and
Mhm.
Pierce Purpose.
Mhm.
Pierce Purpose is the new anthology that's coming out under the Time to Tell movement. So we don't even have the cover to publicly share
Okay.
yet. That one is coming out this year. I think I've been pierced for purpose in the last year because that book was supposed to drop last year. And then I got into a car accident and that slowed some things down. And so I've been working with the authors like, this book is coming out and I believe there's something in it that is so impactful because as we know, when you're writing these books, when you're telling your story, when you're exposing the enemy, the attack is real. Like the things that you go through in your personal life. And so many things have hindered it's never taken me, it's been almost a year. It's never taken that long for me to publish a book.
Yeah.
But with Pierce Purpose, we're almost there though. We're this close. And so, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna, because you were hitting on it. I thought that's the question you were gonna ask, but I'm gonna ask the question. When you started writing, the two of you, when you started writing your story, did it trigger bad memories, and then did you stop writing, or did you push through it when the triggers started coming back? Because they say when you start, when you start rehashing or rethinking what you went through, and then although you tried to put it aside and forget about it, you're like, well, no, now I got to write about it.
Right.
And so when you started writing, how did it?
For me, I think it was necessary for me. It didn't make me stop writing, or it didn't rehash anything for me. It was something that I needed to really sit down, and think about and process through. Because for me, if I'm talking through it, that's a good thing. If I'm sitting in silence, that's not a good thing. And that's what I've been doing probably for the past, say, 15 years, just sitting in silence. Right. You know what I mean? And all of that pent up resentment is just sitting there. Right. So for me, it was a great thing for me to sit down and actually write, sitting up talking with my wife in the middle of the night, her learning things about my life that she didn't know before, and feelings that she didn't know before. So it really kind of even grew into my relationship and her understanding me, better. That's good. And us talking, her even talking about some of her, backstory as well. So
I just got chills.
Yeah, it brought out a lot.
Good. Yeah, it opened up a deeper level of communication.
Yes.
And within your marriage, even intimacy, because now,
yes.
That brings you closer, that you both are sharing from a place that you hadn't shared before.
Most definitely.
That's good.
For me, it did cause me to do a lot of pausing and stopping. As I stated originally, coming into Brutal Courage, my original intent of coming in contact with Tonya was because I was writing my own personal story, and I was already fighting with what needed to be told because there was so much trauma that I had experienced in life. A lot of it I didn't want to deal with. A lot of it I did block out. And part of the reason why I didn't want to actually write anything, I didn't want to tell the story because I knew at those moments that I would have to relive those moments. And I didn't want to because they were so horrific for me. And most definitely, even the story with sharing in Brutal Courage, this particular individual was like a childhood friend. So I looked at him as a protector to turn around, and then he was like the villain in my home. So I didn't want to talk about the moments. If I had already hid it from my family, it was surely I was not trying to tell the world, but I knew it was something bigger than that. It was my journey with Christ. Then I knew that I had to tell my story because the Bible says that we're overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and by the power of our testimony. Yeah. And so I knew that in telling the story, it was going to liberate me, and I was seeking liberation. Right. And so even as we talk, and I know me and Clint, we have this shared anthology that we'll later talk about, I see that every part, whether it be Pierce Purpose or Pretty Sad, all of it is a journey of healing.
Mhm.
And one thing that comes to mind is it is, in order to heal, there it has to be pain. I think about if our body is inflicted with a sickness, sometimes to the degree we might have to go and get surgery. And so in getting surgery, the surgeon has to go in and he has to do a work. And after that, there will be pain. But that pain is only an indicator that healing is coming, that
Yes.
greater is
Yes.
coming.
Yes.
And so, yes, it was very, very painful. I mean, many nights I cried. I was frustrated. Like, I just cannot do this. My truth, even with writing, I had to get it was so much that I had to then pay a good friend who was my my ghostwriter. It was even hard for me to tell her this stuff. It was like she then started taking up on my pain because it was like the story was horrific. So it was a very long process. But Raheem, when I was finished with writing, you couldn't tell me nothing. That's how I got them 4 books in that 1 year.
There you go.
I was on the journey. I was ready for healing then. I
Flowing.
mean, I was seeking the Father. Like, I'm telling it all. I want all of it off of me because I want to be free. So, yes, it was very painful, and in starting it off. But the more the weights were dropping, I began to feel so much liberated. And I'm like, search me. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? Like, is there something else I need to write about,
Right.
so I could get some things off of me. So yeah, it was painful and I didn't like it, but here I am today. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I advocate for when I'm working with the clients to write their stories. It's an unofficial Right to Heal program.
Yeah.
And what we tell them, or what I tell them, is right through the tears.
Right.
Because for some people, it is going to trigger. It's going to trigger anger. It's going to trigger tears. I tell them to cuss. Do whatever you got to do to get it out. We'll edit it. You don't worry about that part, but you get it out the best way that you know how and however you need to. And then we'll clean it up for publishing. And sometimes you got to leave a little bit of that in there. We did that with one book with Browniesha and I. It was a couple of words that a gentleman used, and I'm like, he meant that.
Yeah.
We're going to leave that right there because he emphasized that, and the world needs to feel that emotion behind it.
Right.
But both of you touched on so many different things. You talked about liberation, the freedom, right, that comes from it. You talked about pain and healing.
Man.
I think people shy away from healing and shy away from sharing certain things or aspects of our lives because it hurts.
Yeah.
But if you can push past the pain, what's on the other side of it is that freedom. You've been writing, and now you want to tell it. And so what happens is you might cry initially, but after you get it out, the way it worked for me at least is once I typed it, then it was easier to talk about it. And then once I talked about it after the first time, the second time, now it's like, I don't care who knows.
Yeah.
It's my truth. It's my story. It's what made me who I am. And I love me. And for a long time, I couldn't even say that. So, to get to that place.
I literally just preached a sermon last week, and we talked about pain being part of the process. It's part of, you can never avoid the pain.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I use an analogy, especially for men, when we're in the gym and we're trying to lift weights, right? And you always need, in order for you to gain muscle, you need a spotter, right? So you need someone to push that weight up for you first and foremost, right? To lift weight that you don't normally lift.
Right.
But as you continue to go through that process of the pain, right, it has to tear, for those people that are science, you have to tear those muscle fibers, right, in order for that muscle to break down.
Right.
So you can build new muscle. You see what I'm saying? So when you go through that pain, right, now you're building a capacity to bring in new strength. You see what I'm saying? To deal with those issues that you're dealing with and that we're writing through.
That's just like when a snake sheds its skin.
Right.
Yeah, they're gonna, it's gonna look bad in the beginning, but after that snake come off all that old skin,
look fresh.
Then you look fresh and new, and that's about the muscles. The muscles are fresh and new. More oxygen is going to the muscles, and it's like, yo, okay, give me more. Give me more. And you constantly just doing it. So,
It's true.
And you learn, to work through it. I as horrific as the experiences I've had, I do have a clear understanding that they were not in vain, because now I can be a help to someone else. I can be the example that that they can do it too.
Right.
You know, because some people, they need that person that they can look up to. And even in writing, all the writing that I have done, and people coming to me like, you know, thank you for telling your story. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. Because one of the big deals for me was, I'll be honest, I was more so shameful of what I had to tell. Because by this time, me telling my story, I'm in ministry, I'm an evangelist, and so the life that I lived prior to Christ, it wouldn't have been acceptable. And so I was like, I am not about to go and tell nobody nothing. I said, they ain't never let me come back in that church again. But then I had to think about it, like, if I don't tell, what about the person that is going through this and is afraid, or the person that's going through this and that's ashamed? And God loved me through it, and God brought me out of it. So then it's you know, the Bible is like an epistle. So these are epistles of us telling stories about things that we've been through and we overcame them. And someone will go back and read these books and say, hey, well, I know such and such personally, and they went through this and they came out, and it gives them hope. So that is like my driving force now. Right. So even though I still feel the pain, but that's the driving force to understand that if I tell my story and I push through this, then I can help somebody else push through too.
In my life, I went through addiction, and my addiction was gambling.
They can tell you leave and come home, all the door is always open, but until you tired and ready to walk out.
And in recent times, in retrospect, I look back and God told me that He didn't leave you, I removed him.
Please stay tuned for the next part of this segment.
Let's talk about it, talk about it. Let's talk about it, talk about it.
Talk about it.
Let's talk about it, talk about it.
Talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
That girl from
Let's talk